That's fine.
We all set? Okay, great. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. And I will now call the meeting of the Gilpin County Board of County Commissioners to order. It is 9 a.m. First of all, before we start, I'd like to recognize and thank all the staff and volunteers who worked on the county fair that we had this weekend. It was wonderful. The weather held out on Saturday. We had rain late, and Sunday we almost made it to about noon. So that's pretty good for up here. Thank you to Crystal, because I know she works tirelessly for a year and then during the fairs. So again, thank you for everyone. Thank you for all the residents and everyone who volunteered and were at the booths and who came and enjoyed it. So it was, I think, it was a success. And from what I hear, everyone's looking forward to next year. So we'll go ahead and move on. We'll have the agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, I have none.
Okay. Entertain a motion to accept or? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm moving ahead of myself. And if we can ask County Attorney Brad Benning to ask about conflicts of interest.
Thank you, commissioners. I just want to make sure today that the business before you is conflict-free. So I'm going to ask each of you to, if you have any conflicts of interest in the business before you today. Commissioner
I have
Morris?
no conflict.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris.
I have no conflict.
I have no conflicts.
Thank you all.
Okay. And we'll go on to next. We have time for public or press comment. These are limited to 3 minutes for each person, and County Manager Rears will keep time. And do we have anyone here in person? No. And is there anyone online that would like to speak?
No one online, Commissioner Bruman.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented. Treasurer's monthly report, June 2024, quarterly reports of the various department reports, Resolution 24-06, amending the list of official appointments, approval of meeting minutes for July 9, 2024, summary of settlement relative to a legal matter. And that is all.
I second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. And our consent agenda has been adopted. And now we'll move on to a review of the cost allocation. I believe online we have Meredith Miller from MGT who provides this for us, and also here at the table, our Finance Director, Aliers. Morning.
Good
Morning.
Hi, good morning. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, everyone can see?
Yes.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Start the show. All right, well, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I am Meredith Miller. I'm a director here at MGT, and I've been working with the county the past few years to prepare the cost allocation plan. Today, just a few quick things to go over, a little bit of background on MGT, go through the county's cost allocation plan, kind of what you see in the document you have in your packet, and then go over some of the specific results for Department of Human Services and Parks and Rec, and then finally answer any questions. But as I'm speaking, if there's anything that you have a question on, feel free to interrupt as well. Okay, so MGT, we are a nationally recognized, locally focused company. We have been around for 50 years, and we are prepare indirect cost allocation plans in our group for the county. But we also have a large technology, education, and human capital practice with 800 staff across the United States. We work on a variety of projects that range from staffing hard to fill / high profile positions, DEI studies, or providing cybersecurity services. So within fiscal, where we provide the cost allocation plan services, we also do user fee studies, management studies, and performance audits. Our cost plan practice is our largest practice, and we work in 37 states across the country. And in Colorado, we work with more than half of the counties to provide cost allocation services. So I've thrown around the word cost allocation and cost allocation plan. For those of you that are not familiar with what a cost allocation plan is, I've got a formal definition here. It's an accounting document that identifies countywide indirect costs and distributes those costs to the benefiting departments or funds. So they're here at the county for Gilpin. The cost plan is structured where we are breaking out the allocating cost to each fund, and then the general fund is broken out by department. So each year the cost plan is updated and based on the most recently completed fiscal year. And so this year we are allocating actual expenditures from FY 2023 of your administrative departments. The cost plan does adhere to some guidelines set by Office of Management and Budget that require specific costs of how they should be treated and what can be included, and it's specifically related to grants. This slide shows you shows you the allocating departments within the cost plan. So we're allocating maintenance, administration, finance, HR, attorney, and IT. And each of these administrative departments, we then break it down into what are the main functions, what are the main levels of services being provided. And for each of those functions, what are some metrics? What are ways we can allocate those costs that really represent the level of service being provided by the staff at the county? So for example, finance has 3 different functions: general finance, payroll, and accounts payable. And so for each of those functions, we want to make sure we are using an allocation statistic that is representative of effort. So the allocation statistic needs to be associated. So what is associated with that department, allocable, what that means is it has to be something that's also a real statistic. It can't just, we try not to use like percentage efforts. We try to use actual statistics that are auditable. And this slide shows you some examples of some of the statistics that we use within the plan to allocate the cost out, so that the costs are, everything is defensible within the cost allocation plan and really tied to the services being provided. So in the 2023 cost plan that we recently wrapped up, the cost did go up about 13% as compared to last year for the county. Now, saying that, not every department and fund, those costs are not being recovered back to the general fund. So for those 2 that we're focusing on today, Department of Human Services and Parks and Rec. So Department of Human Services allocation actually did decrease about 11% from last year, and I'll go into the specifics on that in a minute. And then Parks and Rec, inversely, costs went up for Parks and Rec. So like I said, costs are overall went up for the county. That tends to happen every year. It's very rare that costs are going down. But Parks and Rec, also some of their metrics went up. So they had higher FTEs and higher costs that related to the maintenance for their facilities. And I'll show you the specifics on that as well. So on this slide, you can see kind of a table. I know it's a lot of numbers on here, but hopefully you can see it. What we're showing here is on the left-hand column, those are the departments that are the administrative service departments that are providing services to the Parks and Rec Fund. And you can see in the 2023 allocation column and the 2022 allocation column, the allocated cost for each of those departments to provide services to Parks and Rec. So you'll notice pretty quickly in the dollar variance and the percentage variance that there were a pretty big increases from 22 to 23. The largest one with both dollar and percentage variance is coming from maintenance. So maintenance specifically, they had higher costs for maintenance due to increase in work orders for the staff that are providing services to Parks and Rec facilities like the community center. Those maintenance work orders went up from 12% of total to 17%. Additionally, the contract custodial cost increased significantly from about $18,000 to $74,000. So those things really both contributed to that large variance within maintenance for this year to increase Parks and Rec. And then you'll see some increases from some of those other departments down below as well. And a lot of those are coming from the FTEs went up for Parks and Rec. Their actual full-time equivalent employees increased from 22 to 23. And we use FTEs to allocate costs some or all of the costs within county manager, HR, and attorney. So all of that kind of contributes to their increase for this year. Human Services is a little more unique. In Colorado, the state's Department of Human Services reimburses counties for a portion of the administrative cost / burden to provide those services. So they reimburse 30% currently. This has been going on for decades when the state pushed that county effort for human services down to the county level and is not being done at the state level. So it's a combination of what are the indirect costs for this year, and then there's a true up calculation to really level it out. So what you're seeing here is a comparison of the 2022 and 2023 indirect cost, and then the final calculation and reimbursement amount. I thought I heard someone talking, sorry. So administrative services, costs associated with serving human services did go down this year, as you can see in the 2023 as opposed to 2022. The larger increase of this is coming from depreciation due to a slight methodology change this year. We allocate actual depreciation cost in the cost plan for certain buildings, as that's part of the full cost of services to provide services there at the county. And this year an adjustment was made to decrease the cost to human services since their grants pay directly for a portion of that building. And then the true up calculation, what you're seeing in that calculation of county reimbursement section at the bottom, that A through E steps, what we're doing is we're really truing up as far as what was projected 2 years prior. So in 2021, there's always a 2-year gap. In 2021, what was projected, and then where did the actual indirect costs come in this year? So as you can see, it was 236,624. That was the projected indirect cost 2 years prior. And this year we're looking at the actual costs are 214. So that variance is the negative 22,360. So we have to take that into account to true up the reimbursement for this year, since the actual indirect costs were lower than what was projected. So that kind of decreases the total amount that 30% of reimbursement is applied against. So I know that was a lot of numbers, but hopefully you were able to follow the calculations, and you also have this page in your packet as well. All right, that is all I wanted to cover today. Are there any questions or concerns?
I came up with a question. You might have answered this in past years. I see that the liability insurance comes out of the county managers for every department except for the sheriff's office. So is that allocated out differently in a different space for that?
Yeah, so when there's an exception like that where a department is excluded from that allocation, it's because they pay directly. So if they pay directly, in that sense, they pay directly for their liability insurance, we do not allocate those costs as well indirectly so that there's no double billing occurring.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just know that that's an area where the insurance and the claims have been going up every year.
Yes, I understand that's a burden that everyone within the state is facing, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yes.
Could you repeat again on why, at least maybe I understand why the Health and Human Services Department went down is because of the depreciation of the building that they're in is different this year than last year. Did I understand that properly?
Yes, so we made an adjustment to their depreciation charge this year. So just a slight methodology change, really. The grants do pay directly for a portion of the building directly. So we have adjusted the indirect charges for depreciation to human services. So that created a decrease this year. That methodology will be what we'll be using consistently going forward. So it's kind of a one-time decrease this year.
Thank you.
I don't have any more questions. Thank you, though.
Of course, thank you all.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any questions for Joe?
I do. I don't know if it's for Joe or for the presenter, but I've asked this question before when we had our last discussion on the allocation and why the food pantry was not broken out for as a description of what the costs are for allocation for that.
So the cost allocation plan sits in a very finite function for the county. It really is looking at breaking out the costs of departments. So the reason we have veterans, seniors is because they are departments within the general fund. Health and Human Services is essentially its own department within its fund. The food pantry exists within that. So it doesn't fall under the scope of the cost allocation plan. We don't break out, individual chunks of departments like that.
So if someone was interested in what the true cost of operating the food pantry, they would not get it from this report. They would have to get it from other information.
Correct. The cost allocation plan just doesn't, breaking out the food pantry in this plan is not just a part of the plan. It doesn't, it doesn't fall into the scope of this plan. You would need to get that information in a different
That's the cost allocation doesn't break out or look at programming per se. It's just the overall department and its functions.
kind of the way I have described it in the past is if County Manager Rears, if you wanted to ask him, well, how much of your staff's time is allocated to the board and doing board meetings versus that's not a cost allocation plan. That would be more of a question for him that he would need to dig into his own group and answer. And that's kind of the same way the food pantry exists within the scope of this plan.
Do we have any other programs similar to that that are under different departments but not broken out as far as that would be similar to the food pantry?
Well, I guess I don't know what would be similar to the food pantry. I think we do have programs within the county that exists within, certain departments that aren't broken out. Nothing comes to mind at this moment, but
Its own facility, its own employees. It would just be,
It's a-
I'm just thinking of an example. I can't think of another one, so I was just wondering if we had.
well, physically, I guess I would think that Public Works would have a lot of things like this. They might physically be in the same building, but different parts of that facility is doing different things, the part of the facility that I take.
Would be, one that comes to mind is the transfer station. It has a separate building, has separate employees, but they're still under the department of Public Works. Would that be an example, a
Well,
similar example?
Solid waste is its own fund.
That's so fun. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm thinking of is we do a lot of road maintenance out of Public Works. We also repair vehicles. If my vehicle comes up for repair and it's a county vehicle, I take it into Public Works. They do the maintenance there, but that's not broken out in this plan on how much of the maintenance on our own vehicles are doing versus how much road maintenance they're doing around the county versus how much snow removal. And I know it all happens in the same facility, but if you moved, one of the garages across the street, it would be exactly like the food pantry to me, and it would not be broken out in this plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And if I can just comment, I agree with Joe. Like I mentioned during the presentation, the plan is structured at a fund level and then a departmental level. So costs for the food pantry are basically embedded in that human services cost. It's not broken out specifically to those programs. That's something that would be separate from this cost allocation plan where, if you wanted to dive in and look at specific costs for programmatic expenditures within a specific fund, that would be a separate type of work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, this is, as I understand it, a higher look at costs and divided amongst the departments. It's not going specifically into, programming and staff for programming and all that, which would be a lot more detailed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or?
No, I just think that, simplistically, it's mostly charging departments for using other staff in other departments.
Mhm.
That's basically what it is.
I do have a question on her first slide. There were, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different methods for determining allocation. One is square footage, number of employees, amount of expenditures, the accounts payable, number of accounts payable, and IT. How do you determine which ones you're going to apply to which department? Maybe that should be addressed to her, Meredith.
Sure. So really it's determining what our metrics are really associated with the level of service being provided. So we start with the departments and then determine what are the main services provided. So like within finance, like I mentioned, I think that was one of my examples. We break out finance into, basic kind of finance in general, which we allocate on total expenditures. Because really what a lot of finance does is support everything within the county from a financial state. And then payroll is specifically allocated using FTEs because that is what is tied to payroll. It's tied to FTEs, it's tied to employees. And then AP, that's where we use for accounts payable, we're using those actual AP transactions. So it's really, working with the departments to structure this. And we've been preparing the cost allocation plan for a long time at the county. And so really we set this and then every year we're kind of seeing, does this still make sense or there's adjustments made? We try not to change the, metrics and the service levels too much so that the cost plan is consistent because the reimbursements, as you saw with that example with human services, there's true ups that occur. So if you're changing a lot of the structure constantly, it can negatively impact the reimbursement for the county.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Meredith. We appreciate you coming every year. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we'll go on, we'll have our legislative consideration of a septic system replacement expense. And we have Elisa Witt, the health director, Ray Rears, and Ed Bowditch to present. Good morning.
Make sure those mics are,
Oh, yeah,
working.
make sure they're on. Let's see, that one,
Great.
see a green light yet?
so it's probably best for Director Witt to start the description, since it was really her question during the town hall that started this path, and this is a new idea that we've never really approached about seeing if we can change some laws, work with our lobbyist firm to make some improvements, not just in Gilpin County, but at a statewide. So I think it would be appropriate if she kind of gives it a description of how we got to this point.
Sure. Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I haven't been regulating on-site wastewater treatment systems, otherwise known as septic systems, for very long in my career. But in the short time that I have been doing that, I have noticed several instances within Gilpin County and many instances throughout the state of Colorado. Through meetings I attend, there's a group for all the local public health agencies called the Water Quality Program Managers. And we get together on a regular basis and share across county concerns and working with the state laws and the regulators and also through contractor issues. And so it's a really great group, a very supportive group of people all basically regulating on-site wastewater treatment systems in Colorado. Several of the members have actually moved here from other states where they regulated septic in other states and brought their experiences from those states. And what comes up not too infrequently is that there'll be systems that have reached their lifespan. Many of those in Gilpin County are infrastructure. A lot of our housing is relatively old. Even though we do have a lot of new housing, I would say the majority of our housing stock is at the point where the the originally installed septic system has reached its lifespan. So septic systems are designed to last 20 to 30 years. Sometimes they can last longer depending on how they're maintained and used, but they're not designed to last the length of a typical home, how long a home would last. And so many homeowners are quite surprised when their system fails at the cost of replacing it. It especially becomes a problem when somebody like me doesn't have a lot of acreage at their property. And what ends up happening, the original system that was designed at a certain non-mechanical treatment level has to be replaced by a higher level treatment system, which is much more expensive and requires mechanical operation parts. And that can cost anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 for a higher level treatment system. This is not an expense that many homeowners are prepared for. And if they're especially on a fixed income, retired, or just low income, it becomes a real financial burden to be able to comply with state law, which is that you have to have a working septic system that adequately treats the septage, the discharge from your house. And if you can't afford to replace it and you have no other options, there have been situations, not yet, well, I've been in charge in Gilpin County, but in other counties I've heard where people have been forced to leave and abandon their property against their will because they are in violation. So it becomes a public health matter, requiring a cease and desist order that would require them to leave their property. And this is a very difficult situation for everyone involved. There was a particular case in Jefferson County that was highlighted at one of our meetings where it was a elderly grandfather who was the sole caregiver for a disabled son, and they were forced to leave their home with no other options for housing. So that came up at professional meetings, and it's been a topic of discussion ever since I began regulating septic. And so the suggestion that I made when Senator Roberts and Representative Amabile asked for ideas for the next legislative session in Colorado, I suggested that there could be a program like there are in some other states where the state sponsors either a no interest or a very low interest loan program that would assure that somebody wouldn't be forced to either move out of their property or risk being in violation of state law. It's also obviously an environmental concern. When somebody's septic system is failing, it can invade the water system or a neighbor's property or well. And I believe there are quite a few residences in Gilpin County who may be aware that their system is failing or at the end of their life and are basically hiding that fact because they don't want to be forced to move and they don't have the finance to pay for it. So this to me is a perfect situation where legislation could come in to assist those people who are kind of caught in this unfortunate predicament.
And do you follow the chain? So after Director Witt raised the question during the town hall, then Commissioner Mornis expressed interest in seeing if it could be something shared through the CCI as an option. That didn't work out for various timing, but because there was various conversation on that, I did reach out to Ed and kind of involved him to see what role he could potentially play in this.
Mhm. Right. And I have a question. In your conversations with others from other states about the programs, or an idea, how would this be paid for?
Well, that's always the question when you're looking at legislation. Where's the money? Where's the money going to come from? And I'm not an expert on that. That's why Ed is here to talk. But basically, there's several different ways that I've seen it happen in a couple of other states. And maybe Ed, I don't know if you've had time to research this much, but sometimes they can follow federal guidelines, like what would qualify someone, for example, with HUD or through the EPA. So there are many programs already in public health where there are federal dollars involved, but then the state administers those dollars. So one thing would be important is who would, first of all, of course, like where the money is going to come from, but then also how is it administered? Because most local public health agencies don't have, don't want to take on that administrative burden. So that is also part of it is what would be the administrative rules and how would the governance be of those funds? But I think that the EPA for one and HUD for another could have a vested interest in this program due to both the housing impact and the environmental impact. And there's other programs that they could kind of mirror in how they structure the financial piece of it. Sometimes there are grants in some states where it's not actually a loan, and then sometimes it's a very long-term loan. And then there are strings attached, for example, that if you sell your home within a certain period after receiving the loan, then there are penalties or payback issues. There's a lot of administrative structure that would have to go with it.
Are
Okay,
there?
I was going to say, let's let Ed, because I'm sure he's
If,
looked into some of this.
I apologize, but if I could interrupt for one moment, the representative from the state, Chuck, is also, he's joined the meeting. So I don't know if you want to do an introduction for him. He can only be here for about 30 minutes.
Right,
so-
right. So Chuck Cusano is the CDPHE person who supports all local public health agencies in Colorado. So when we have questions and interpreting state law or how our local law relates to the state law, he is the expert, and he is the expert on a lot of things regarding on-site wastewater treatment, and we rely on him for that support. So he routinely communicates with all states over and above my limited communication with them. And with years of experience, he can speak to this issue as well.
CDPH.
Yeah, he's the main expert for all local public health agencies on OWTS for CDPHE. So I know he's got a busy schedule, so yeah.
And Mr. Cusano, if do you have anything to add to this for us, please?
Is it Cusino?
Well, I guess for the record, last name's Cusino.
Cusino.
No.
Sorry, Chuck.
Right.
All
I
right,
just call you Chuck.
I get that all the time. Yes, I just joined the meeting here. I am the onsite wastewater coordinator for the state of Colorado, and I have the expertise in onsite wastewater. I'm not an expert in financing. I'm aware of what national programs are out there. The bipartisan infrastructure law, the bill, they appropriated funding a couple years back for decentralized wastewater, but it was never funded, basically, or a very, very small part of it. There are other funds that we direct people to through EPA or rural development. USDA rural development. But there's not a lot of funding flying right now. Most of what I see comes from programs that are developed through state agencies or other nonprofit organizations that are able to obtain grant funding. There's one called Craft 3 out in Oregon and Washington that funds a large portion of repairs and replacement systems for residential homes. There's a large program in Minnesota, again, started through the state. But so there are funds that do come out of federal grant programs, but we currently don't have anything in Colorado for these. I probably get 2 calls a month, 1 to 2 calls a month, either from county agencies or homeowners throughout the state that say, hey, is there any funding available? We have failing septic and we can't afford it. So usually right now I'm just directing them to the USDA, but that's for low income people. So I guess that's what I have to say at this point. I just joined the meeting, so I kind of came in midstream.
Great. Well, thank you. That is helpful, always knowing where money or how other states are funding it. Let's see. And I'm sorry, Ed, if you'd like to
Okay.
go ahead and jump in now.
Thank you. Ed Bowditch with Bowditch and Castle. Jennifer apologizes for her absence. She's had some surgery last week, but is doing fine.
Okay.
I wanted to let you know in the last week or so, since I've become an expert in this area, I've talked to the State Department of Natural Resources just to kind of see if they want to be included in any discussions, not really knowing exactly where we're headed. I spoke yesterday to the legislative liaison from the Department of Public Health to loop them in, and they're going to get back with me. I talked to CCI to let them know we might be working on this, and we will keep them in the loop as well. And then I texted Senator Roberts, knowing he was the one here, and he said, absolutely, keep me informed where this goes. I think the next step is to do a little more research about what the state could operate. Obviously, some states have some sort of a centralized loan, low interest, no interest, or low interest loan program for lower income or fixed income people to apply. I don't know where that would be located if we wanted to go that route. And then to your question, Commissioner, where the money would come from. It is not going to be easy to get money this year. It will be easier if the direction we go is a one-time pot of money that can be used as a kind of a revolving loan program. But those are all details to be worked out. But I appreciate all the expertise that everyone has brought to this, and I'm continuing the discussions.
So I believe one of the first questions is, this is the first time we're having this discussion, is does the board want to task Ed on this particular task of trying to run a bill? And that's a yes or no. And then the second part is, obviously a lot of details need to be worked out. And this is the first conversation. And my suggestion there was to form some sort of working group with the key players involved in this, to work on this working group, work on this, drafting this, what exactly is the ask. That would be my suggestion to the board, but obviously I'll defer to Ed because he's the one that does this and I do not, but.
Sure, I think it's a good idea and it would benefit people. And like you said, have the other tangential benefits, clean water and the environment. But since you know, as you said, that most homes in Gilpin are older, it could become a great, huge need and a huge problem, actually, if there isn't something to address it. So I think that's great. It's, if we would have known a little earlier or talked a little earlier, we could have put it forward. I imagine it would have gotten good support in the CCI meeting for legislative proposals.
Yeah, I would think so as well, because most counties, in the majority in Colorado are rural. We have that, as well as even some of the larger counties, Jefferson and, Boulder and all still have a lot of people on septics and all. And I see Chuck has his hand raised.
Yeah, I did, we have talked with our SRF, our State Revolving Fund group here at CDPHE. And one of the issues is they're not set up to give loans to private individuals, more to governmental entities. So funding could be provided to a governmental entity and distributed to there, but that agency, again, I'm not an expert on it, but when we talked about it over previous years, they said, well, we can't give it to private individuals. They just are not set up to do it that way. So anything through SRF funding, through EPA, SRF funds are allowed to go for decentralized wastewater. That is written in there. So it's not like they can't do it. It's just like, say, they're not set up to do it to private individuals. We did have some money. I was working on it started in 2018 through 2019, and things were moving forward, and 2020 hit and that money went away, unfortunately. But anyway, so it was just a thing on the SRF. Like I say, they are allowed to do it, but they're not set up to do it to private individuals. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll just add that,
Excuse me, is your mic on? I'm sorry.
I said, obviously, I think this is a good idea because it proceeded with it, and it's not unfortunate. The timing with CCI just didn't work out as far as getting information they needed. But they can certainly, if we go forward with it, they can certainly support it. And I think having their name behind any legislation is a positive. But my question to you, Ed, is since with your background and your experience of having to go through this, is this something that we could find a representative to support, or what do you see as the hurdle of getting it through legislation that we need to be aware of?
Thank you for the question. The big hurdle will be, one, developing the appropriate system, as Chuck just said, figuring out how to structure it so some sort of entity can make loans to private individuals, if that's where we end up. That's one hurdle. That's the administrative part of developing a bill. And thank goodness it's July and we have time to figure that out before January. The biggest hurdle will be funding. And there will be funding. I think we can find somebody, whether it's, Senator Roberts. I don't want to immediately say he would do it, but whether it's him or somebody else, I think this is a good idea. And I've received some of the copies of some of the emails that have been sent out on the listserv, and there's a lot of support around the state. From the San Luis Valley, I happened to be meeting with 2 legislators from Douglas County last week. I just mentioned the issue to them that I was working on it, and they said, this is an issue in Parker, Colorado. I mean, there are a lot of people who have septic tanks. Obviously, every single state program I've looked at has some sort of a either income-based cap or property-based cap, which is what you'd want. We're not setting up a program for wealthy homes to get some sort of assistance, but for the people who really need it. So the biggest hurdle will be the funding.
I did want to mention, maybe it was 2 years ago, that the state set up a revolving housing fund. And that would work the way you're talking. The money would go to a jurisdiction, and then they would give out the loans, and as the loans were repaid, they would replenish and then give out other loans. So that's the revolving part of it. And I don't know if it's being funded anymore, or if jurisdictions are just using the revolving money that they have in it, but it was a system that was set up specifically for housing, and some counties have mentioned in CCI, CCAT, that they've benefited from that. So that might be a precedent that there's been a model like that.
And then that way too, the money needed is a lot less because you just need that initial seed money going forward. I know a lot of the economic development, Clear Creek Economic Development, which Ray sits on the board and I'm involved with on the loan process, works that way. Loans give out, help to fund, and the interest paid and all, help to fund other loans coming in. And that's very successful and able to go quite a ways. So that is a good model to use.
That's for business startups, correct?
Correct, but it is the same funding type of model, yes.
Ed, are you familiar with any kind of grant programs or how those are initiated or started? Because that could be another option for people who even getting a loan might be difficult.
Yeah, some states do have grant programs, and it can be a combination of a loan or a grant depending on someone's income. That will be a tougher stretch here, but at this point, I think all options should be under consideration. As I said, I know that the Department of Natural Resources is involved in many water programs, not necessarily water quality, that's really CDPHE, but you've got other groups around the state, and my work is just starting in terms of trying to find out what the options are. And then we'll want to make something that works for the residents, for the ease of the counties, and whatnot.
Right.
I did have a question for Chuck, Mr. Cusano.
Cousineau.
You stated that there was a federal program that was approved, but no funds were allocated. Do you have the name and number of that legislation?
It's all through the bipartisan infrastructure law. I don't have the exact item on that, but I mean, I could get a lot more information. I've just been kind of hovering over it to see if through the national organization, National On-Site Wastewater Recycling Association, it's a national organization for practitioners and regulators, whatever. But and I'm also involved with SORA, the state regulators, people that do my positions throughout the country, and they keep tabs on that stuff pretty good. Like I say, it's all that it was appropriated but never funded. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but the money was never fully given to this project. But like I say, I do have several sources that if money's come out, I'll be one of the first ones to know, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners, can I just ask one question just on this issue? I'm just thinking and thinking about this and hearing the difference between the amount of money versus what we're doing to help these folks. Is maintenance, so is the 20 to 30 years maintenance or that they fail, is that regardless of any maintenance over time? Because I know they should be maintained periodically.
Well, 20 to 30 years is an average of what a system should last for to be designed. But that really depends on usage and maintenance. They can last longer. There's no way to predict when a system might fail.
Right.
But I know just from personal experience, we've lived here for 10 years and our house was built in 1999. So now our system is reaching its lifespan. So far, there's no signs of it failing, but my husband didn't believe me when I told him because of our size of our small lot, it probably would cost us $60,000 to replace it because you cannot reuse the same land for a septic field. Once that septic field stops functioning, it can't be reused. So it's also an issue of, what it would cost to replace. It's actually in smaller lots more expensive to replace than the original system was because of the higher level treatment needed. So, and that's also, it's underground. So it's very hard to know when a system is going to fail, or it's usually after the fact that you find out and you're not prepared. Yeah.
Thank you. No,
Well, and it's harder too, because if you can't use that same ground again, then you need to find the correct placement and you need to be 100 feet from any other wells
200.
or 200
And yeah.
from any other wells or septic stalls. So,
Yeah.
On small lots, that really comes to be.
I was just thinking if you can bite off a bigger, smaller expense for maintenance, if that helped. But it sounds like, again, just parts. It's just parts that fail.
It's just the biochemistry of the septic field. It has a lifespan.
Right.
And how you maintain it, if you don't maintain it properly, it will last a shorter amount of time. Yeah.
Director Witt has usually is notified by a neighbor that there's an issue with a septic system, and then it gets inspected.
Right.
So that's typically, she says typically it fails, and then there's a problem. So,
Yeah. It's really disheartening to, work with people who get this surprise and have no idea. One of the things I want to work on is more homeowner education and more realtor education, and making sure when people buy a property that they understand that this could be a bill down the road. I just think for a lot of people, they have no idea. We didn't know we'd be possibly $60,000 coming up in our home.
I
Yeah.
think that's true. There are people buying small lots and then they buy the lot, and then when they find out the enhanced ones are so expensive because of the space they have to work with, I think they're shocked. Sometimes the lot is cheaper than the system.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then they have to decide if they can really afford to build or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw in the community development report, there was a case they had worked on where someone put a vault in without a permit. They put in a vault to supplement their septic.
Mhm.
Is that even an option for people?
Well, Chuck is the expert on that, but so he'll jump in if I say something incorrect. So county by county, there's a state code and then there's county code, and each county gets to decide whether they will allow certain things. And so vaults are allowed in Gilpin County, but only when it is an adjunct to a properly working regular septic system. We wouldn't allow a vault by itself. And some people do try that because it's a lot cheaper and it doesn't require that higher level treatment system. But according to our regulations and state code, a vault just separately as a septic system is not allowed anymore, but it can be an adjunct to a properly maintained and working regular system, sort of as an additional piece to handle maybe an extra bedroom or an expansion or something like that. Correct me if I said anything wrong, Chuck.
Yeah, I can jump in on that.
Sure.
Vaults are not allowed anywhere where a conforming OWTS can be installed. So if you can put an OWTS on, you have, and people think vaults are cheaper, but they're really not when you look at the long-term cost of pumping and hauling. And pumping out every gallon you use has to be hauled away. So long-term costs can get very, very high. So yeah, and as far as septic systems go, she's correct, 20, 30 years is an average. The maintenance really is the pumping of the tank, the use, homeowner education. There is a homeowner education, a list I can send you later. NAURA, the National On-Site Wastewater Association, has free homeowner education online videos that are available online. They're pretty good. I've watched a couple of them. They've done a really nice job with that. So yeah, and actually for some small lots, if there is no room, where systems usually fail, if you think of a 1 foot bed of stone, that's your sole treatment area, your drain field, whatever, it fails at the interface of the existing soil and the base of that stone. There's an organic mat that forms there. Typically, if you dig down maybe 8 inches to a foot below that, you run into natural soil again. So you can dig that out and put it in the same spot, but it again, they're all very costly. And like Alyssa said, you don't really know when things, especially if you're not monitoring it, or have somebody do that. So, but pumping is critical. And they used to say pump it every 3 to 5 years, and that's kind of not. Ours is more have it inspected every 3 to 5 years, assuming that all pumpers are going to be ethical, because we don't want to create the biosolids. We don't want to pump things out and just have them hauling to the wastewater plants or whatever disposal site that we have just for the sake of doing it. Some tanks don't need to be pumped every 10 years. Some need to be pumped every 1 to 2 years. It depends on usage. So.
Great. Oh, good. Well, thank you. Let's see. So Ed, are you do you have enough direction from us at this point?
Yes, I'll
What about-
continue to work on this and work in concert with the experts, and keep the board updated and bring back any more substantive and specific proposals.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
On the working group, are you wanting to at some point have the commissioner serving on that, or you want to work kind of in the CUPHD realm first and the legislative and just come back to us?
There are at least a dozen people in my position in other counties in Colorado who have stepped up and said, we want to help. We want to be a part of that. So I think if we form a working group, we might want to do it from a variety of counties across the state so that we have representation from other areas and find the right person to sponsor the bill. I'm also wondering if we might want to elicit some help from our Congressman Joe Neguse, because I do think maybe, like I said, either the EPA or HUD might be interested in helping with this issue. The EPA especially has a vested interest, of course, in protecting groundwater. So.
But USDA.
USDA, thank you. Yeah, for
USDA,
rural
right.
development, right. Thank you. That would probably be better.
Yeah, because I know they're active in many different areas and providing money and grants, and we frequently get updates from them as far as programming and grants and all.
Yeah, rural development.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, I know, be having a board meeting with CC4CA and CCAT as well,
Right.
coming up, that they would be, bring those up. So we can get even more on board, which would be great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
good.
Good
Well, thank
idea.
you so much. And
Thank you all.
look forward to hearing from you for the next steps.
Thank you.
Make any kind of formal statement. This is just a direct.
Just as direction, and
Direction.
it's pretty clear that there was a direction given before him to proceed, so yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ed.
Say hi, Jennifer.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, and now we'll be moving on towards Resolution 24-105, electing to participate in the state of Colorado opioid settlement with the Kroger Company. And we have Sam Bauer, our administrative analyst.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Fairly simple item here before you today. The state of Colorado has reached a new opioid settlement with the Kroger Company. So all this resolution does is affirm Gilpin County's intent to participate in that settlement. Pretty similar to some previous decisions the board has made with previous settlements. The one thing I do want to make clear to you is that this does not change our decision to opt in or opt out to the region. So these funds that would be received from this additional settlement would be deferred to the region as per the board's previous decision under Resolution 2222. And that would be deferred to the Gateway to the Rockies Regional Opioid Council, which would then apportion those funds. So that's about it. I'll stand for any questions the board may have.
Pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't either, and I feel that the small amount that we have will be more impactful if we put it in the total fund with Grok to be used.
I have no comments.
Commissioners, I'll just add to this. I did reach out to Central City previously and talked to Reba and Daniel, informing them that hopefully they're aware of the Kroger settlement. And then I've reached out to them again and also now added Blackhawk just to support this for several reasons. One, it brings more money to the state and more money to those impacted in local governments. And so it's helpful for everyone to be participating in that. So, yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And it also sends a message that, this is a punishment for opioid abuse for those that allowed that to occur. So prevalently, I should say. So again, I think it's a good thing for everyone to be looking at for that reason.
Okay.
Later, when we do our updates, I was gonna report in on the latest on Grok and the settlement funds and where that's at. So I'll do that later.
Oh, great.
Okay, great. Okay, then it sounds like if there aren't any further comments or questions, we can move on. I'll entertain a motion.
Chair Bruman, I move that we adopt Resolution 24-105. This is electing to participate in the state of Colorado opioid settlement with the Kroger Company.
My second.
Okay, having a motion in a second, all in favor of adopting Resolution 24-105? Aye. And with none opposed, so the resolution is adopted 3-0. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And now we have Resolution 24-107, amending Gilpin County's participation in United Power Green Power Program. And Joe Lear, our Finance Director. Hello again.
Morning, Commissioners. So I believe you all have a memo on this. We were recently notified by United Power that our participation in the green energy program, which was spearheaded in 2019 by Commissioner Gail Watson, would be getting more costly should we choose to continue to participate. Right now, we are enrolled to use only renewable energy. This happens in blocks, which I am not an expert on, but I was looking at the cost provided by John Combs and Ryan Keenan. So we've kind of laid it out here. Just an overview of our options. So currently, if we want to stay completely green, This increases our costs $804 a month, which is $9,656 a year, roughly. Give or take a couple of cents. Then we put some options down here on the second page of your document. Obviously, if we drop the program, we don't drop all of our energy costs. We just drop the cost of the green program, which will lower costs. We also have the ability to do different percentages. We can opt to use 25% green energy, 50, 75, up to 100. So really, I've just laid out the costs here, and I'm probably not an expert on the power side of this, but I am here to try and answer any questions in order to facilitate us coming to a decision.
And this is really a policy decision for the board as to how you would like to proceed with this. As referenced in the memo, it was the previous direction of the board to be fully green. And so we just, since there are a change in the program, we wanted to make sure the board gave us direction as to how to proceed.
Okay. And also, I just wanted to clarify that overall, United Power does have 48% of its power from renewable sources currently.
Yes.
Okay.
I was led to believe that if they had more demand for it, they would get more, but I actually, obviously, I'm not them. So, but
Well, and we are members of CC4CA, the Colorado Climate Action. And I know that reducing greenhouse gases is not just a county or state goal, but a national goal. So this is one step toward that goal.
I believe we can, if we can certainly save expenses, utility expenses for throughout the county and buildings. I think this is a good idea to not to drop the program.
And I think it's for the gain for the environment at some minimal cost. And I know that many residents, I don't know, we've never polled them, don't have a percentage. Many residents, you know, really want the county to be doing things that support the environment and the climate. So I guess I'm okay with paying the additional to retain it.
I guess my question would be is in looking, and I know since we're into budget seasons, the cost of energy, do we have a percentage or kind of a guesstimate as to where, or, you know, how we see that going in terms of any kind of an increase or?
well, obviously, we know it's going up. Energy is getting more expensive. We were sent a notice, I believe, a couple of months ago that there would be an increase that is separate to this that Ryan did include in his 2025 budget estimates. We've had our initial meetings with some departments. The facilities director is one of those departments. He did include his initial utilities costs, I believe, went up by 10%. I think is what he put in there, which seems right. He did not put this in there, but that $9,000 would obviously be broken out into many different accounts. So it would be a very small adjustment. If we include this from the budget he submitted to the budget, we would probably augment. But we do expect energy costs to continue to rise in the future, not only for us, but pretty much for everyone.
I know we've discussed from time to time, you know, looking at the county doing additional alternative energy when we can, you know, like solar in particular, solar. So you're saying it's $800 a month roughly?
$804.65. And again, the second you sign up for something like this, that amount will change. I mean, it would be the same if you opted out and you did, you went back to whatever rate it was, which I don't have offhand, but if you did opt out, I'm sure that rate would be going up too. It's just the cost of energy for everybody just continues to rise on a monthly basis.
I guess I'm looking beyond just cost, but benefits.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm here to speak to the numbers aspect of it. I can answer any questions you have to that. Per county manager Rears, really the decision to continue or to not continue is a policy decision for the board as far as financials. I can speak to the fact that it does increase costs, but I can also say that the county has positioned itself well to, and I'm not just talking about this program, I'm just talking in general. We've positioned ourselves well when it comes to these things. We essentially plan on costs for all programs increasing. And we manage that well, I believe.
Commissioner Berman, you're on the CC for CA for us. Is this something that's come up in that group?
At this point, no, but they're always looking at, overall promoting the use of alternate or energy sources. And, I myself, I had to admit, I was looking at, that's quite an increase. And glad to see that we had some options, maybe going to a percentage, because they do have 48% of their overall power is from renewable resources. So I was thinking if we did that, staying with or encouraging them, and then maybe staying 50% of our current power usage instead of the full 100%.
And Director Allaire, is this something we can change your different years? Are we locked into a certain amount? Like if we do a percentage, can we change that percentage?
I believe that you can, I do not have the answer to that question offhand. I believe the reason this starts August 1st in conversations I had is because we can opt for different percentages. I don't know at what rate that would happen. I would think that the program they're offering is essentially based on demand. So they offer 48% green energy. If every single county said, or every single supplier said, we want to go to green energy, I don't think they'd probably be able to do that overnight. And I think they'd probably have to build the infrastructure out. So I can't say that we could increase it overnight, but I believe you could decrease it. And I also believe that that's why it's there. But I can get a better answer to that question after the meeting on the flexibility of entering and changing.
I'm hearing 0, 150.
Right. Of course, we've got three options to go, because that way at least we'd be working towards. And United Power does have that as, there again, their efforts to reduce the greenhouse gas and have most of their power, and they have moved from 30 to 48%, which is quite an increase considering.
Which then it says the result is a 29% reduction in the total greenhouse gases emitted from their own power, which is pretty, I think, impressive.
Right, yeah.
Depends on who you talk to.
They purchase most of their wind energy. They don't have any wind farms themselves. So most of it is purchased.
Right, and that's how they work as a co-op, is they do purchase their power from other sources.
Yeah.
So is anyone ready to make a motion, or do we need further discussion as far as?
Guess you need.
I'll make a motion, but I probably won't get a second. So I won't waste my time.
I mean, I'm here to answer any questions you have. I can speak more to the financial side of it, obviously, in my role, but I'm here to facilitate whatever I can in discussion or policy.
I just think in the realm of the budget, it's small, for the benefit for the, you know, for the air. And I guess I'm thinking about the environmental impacts and also the communicating to our community that we are attentive to climate change and trying to reach some of those goals and be a partner in reaching those goals. And
I can say from, and obviously this would all, everything of the budget is kind of like a Jenga tower, but I can say that when I saw this memo from a financial standpoint, nothing about it, caused me alarm. I kind of expect that power will just power, internet, basic utilities, water, kind of all just continues to be cost increased.
Yeah, the same with dealing with insurance. Always
Correct.
just kind of hold your breath to see what the amount is going to
Correct.
be in the end run. I guess I would just urge that everyone consider, we could kind of hit 2 points as far as doing some cooperation, as far as encouraging a percentage of the power use, as well as maybe limiting some of the fiscal impact.
well, I'll make a motion to adopt an amended resolution 24-107. And that it would be that we would be adopting a 75% of power. Change that in the third whereas the cost would have to be, oh no, the cost is the current. Or so would be the fifth whereas would be the cost would be 603
Per month.
per month. $603 per month. We have what that.
$7,240.20.
724020.
Yeah, I tend to round all these things. We don't put them in the budget with cents, so I just tend to round.
And then in the now therefore would be 75%. So that's my motion.
Okay, a second? I'll second that. Ben, and all in favor? Aye. And those opposed?
Okay,
Okay. And so we'll go ahead and have the amended adopt the resolution with the amendment that it's 75% of the power, and then, I'm sorry, with like 7,200 to increase per year.
We will modify the resolution, of course, based on the revision.
Right.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much, Joe. We appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners, for the compromise.
Okay. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning. Okay, and we've got now resolution 24-103, amending the master policy and procedure, contract managing policy from Sarah Pajek, our paralegal, and Chanda Johnson from Human Resources.
So I'm bringing the contract policy back to you for some minor revisions, specifically excluding the county manager contract from the requirements of the contract management policy in section 2.2. Also in section 7.1, providing the county manager with the authority to designate when an MOU and or an IGA does not need board approval.
could you tell me what that's located?
7.1 is the second revision. Specifically that last insert after Gilpin County, comma, unless determined by. And then the reason we are putting in section 2.2's revision is because it's essentially an employment contract. And essentially it does go to the board already, but it doesn't need to be in a public meeting necessarily. It's an employment contract.
I have a question. If for some reason there's a board that doesn't do the annual review or annual assessment of the accounting manager, would this, if the accounting manager was included in this, they would have to do it at a minimum at least every 3 years to review that.
I think that falls under like HR requirements more so than under contract policy, because that's kind of where this is a unique situation. And also whereas it's a unique position, it's not really one that it's a job, it's not something that we could contract out. So that's why it would be outside the parameters of the contract policy as far as does it need to be revisited and posted as an RFP every 3 years.
Well, I guess the question for HR then is, my question again, if there's a future board that does not do the annual review, does not assess the county manager's position, is there anything in his, like the existing contract that requires it to be done, or there's some kind of a,
It is in.
well, I'm asking HR. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to wait till you're finished with your question, but yeah, it would be highly unusual and it is outlined in the county manager contract. It would also be something I would strongly encourage, and I think that the board future boards would like to continue that process just because it's vital to the oversight of the position as well. Logistically, though, this policy really does not apply to the county manager contract because it is an employment contract, as Sarah has pointed out. I don't even see how this would effectively apply to the county manager's contract, as this is for goods, services, grants, leases, loans, IGAs, MOUs. I have some notes on this actually. So the county manager position, this policy, logistically, I can't see it applying to it. It would be counterproductive to the business needs. In my research, I couldn't even find a specialized firm that would perform county manager or county administrator services. And so really that position is dictated by the employment contract.
Yeah, thank you.
And it does say in there that we do evaluation in the contract.
It does. And it would be something that I think would be highly unusual for it not to occur.
From your HR point of view, because this does apply to, and we've talked about this policy, it applies to things that the county agrees to, and it's the staff that implement them. Do you think that item 2.2 is necessary in there even? Is it supposedly clarifying?
I mean, I think it does. I would put all employment contracts, but honestly, I think this is really the only one that we have that operates outside the normal sphere of employment management that is handled by HR. So I think it is a necessity just to specify that it's an employment contract. I mean, if you wanted to expand it to just that term, we could. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't foresee any reason why that would be an issue. I believe we got away from employment contracts a couple of years ago from those parties that we did have contracted. So I guess I leave that up to you.
Maybe it's just the way that it's worded. Because the policy says it applies to all staff, but this policy is for obtaining and then implementing goods, services, IGAs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it didn't seem like that needed to be in there because it already talks about that in 2.1, that is applicable to all employees.
I think I agree with Commissioner Mollinsworth, is that it's singling out this particular contract, but the county manager has responsibilities. So it's not confusing. He has responsibilities for implementing contracts. But you're-
Absolutely, and that's why I said county manager contract, not county manager. So the county manager still has to follow the rules of this policy, just like the rest of the staff and elected officials. It's just his employment contract isn't applicable to this policy, is how I intended it to be worded.
And what if the county decides to go and have other employee contracts for some reason? Then they would be excluded. So again, they're keeping it just except for employee.
Or
permanent
employment contracts, rather than singling out county manager
I think
contracts.
so.
Although we did, the previous board moved away and got rid of all the employee contracts. They were put in place before by the previous county manager, but they were clunky and awkward and they weren't very equitable. And employees are hired at will. So they didn't really need to be under a contract. There was really a benefit to them. And it just added another level because they're bound to that, the employee handbook, as far as conduct and policies. So I don't know if they would go back to them or not, but it's a fair question.
Yeah, I think she raised it in anticipation of future board, if that's the way they go. I mean, we could change the wording that covers the basis of what we're trying to communicate with this change, is that it excludes employment contracts, that those operate in a different sphere.
That would be clear. That would be clear to me,
Okay.
because otherwise the whole thing is about
Sure.
what we've been talking about,
Yeah.
goods and services and
So
agreements.
excluding employment contracts.
Excluding any and all Gilpin County employment contracts. Just to be
I would say
as
yes.
specific as possible.
Does that address your question too then?
It does.
Yeah.
I do have a question on just for how this is going to be implemented. It says this contract is for RGAs, MOUs, et cetera. Is there any allowance for directors to sign IGAs or MOUs as long as it's less than $5,000?
And the way the policy was written previously, no. And that's why we're adding the provision to 7.1 that would essentially allow Ray to give authority or he himself to execute an MOU or an IGA without it coming to the board for approval. We estimate this will be a very rare occurrence, but it would be in the instance of, like you said, an MOU or an IGA with minimal monetary value associated with it. And maybe one that just needs to be expedited sooner rather than later. But as it was written previously, no, there was no way around taking an IGA or an MOU anywhere other than to the board for signature. And so we wanted to add this caveat so that we did have the ability to do that when an issue like that would arise.
Well, is that something the board really wants to do, is to abdicate their responsibility of having intergovernmental agreements with other jurisdictions and not be part of that decision-making process, no matter what the value is, because it is tying us to, contractually with other jurisdictions. So I'm just wondering if that's something we want to keep in here or not.
Absolutely, and that's why we're bringing it to you. My intent when I wrote it, the initial draft was to always have that power remain with the board. There was an instance where we had it was titled as an MOU, but it ended up becoming, it was a mission of understanding with the youth soccer league that Parks and Recs wanted to execute. And it was, most of the cost was, burdened by the parents signing the kids up for the league, and they were gonna cover most of the costs associated with it. So really, there was no monetary value for Gilpin, or significant monetary value for Gilpin. And before we realized they were calling it a mission versus a memorandum, that's when this issue came to light that like, you know, we're gonna have to make Gabrielle take this to the board. And so that's why we put this in there, because it was such, and you know, if we had another instance where it was an actual MOU, it would have to go through all the steps to get it executed, and it was, you know, for youth soccer league, which don't get me wrong, isn't unimportant, but you know, a lot of the times your agendas are very full. So if we can take any of the minuscule things off your plate, that's what we try to do. But again, ultimately, the decision lies with you if you want to retain that power, and make sure that all MOUs and IGAs do come to the board for
Well,
approval.
From my understanding, 7.1, it's anything over $100,000. And I think committing the county with another jurisdiction organization.
Well, if you look at the
Less.
table, though, actually,
before.
it's from $5,000 to $10,000, no resolution is needed, but over $10,000 to 100, a resolution is preferred.
I'm speaking,
not
I'm not talking about contracts. I'm talking, because this covers IGAs and MOUs. And to me, those are different, a different animal than a contracted for services or something like that.
And yeah, and that's why I did, the table specifically is for contracts for goods and services.
Okay.
That it does not apply to MOUs or IGAs with those thresholds. As this policy is currently written, no matter the monetary value associated with an IGA or an MOU, it has to be reported.
Which is what I would like, and that's what
Yeah.
this is.
And that's what it says.
So what is this $100,000 one time or annually must be presented?
Those-
7.1, that's what that means to me is that anything less than that does not have to be presented to the board.
It always
For goods
comes,
and services.
right. It
I'm
always-
just 7.1, I'm just reiterating what section 0.6 indicated.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
here.
The 100,000, that's for
Those
goods and
is
services.
Referencing the table. above.
Yeah. that's
Right.
Okay, so can tell me where it talks
Also,
about
so
MOUs?
that's in 7.1, the sentence following that first sentence, also any other contract such as an IGA, MOU, lease agreement, grant agreement, or loan agreements must be presented to the BOCC via resolution, regardless of the contract amount, if
Okay.
any, to be paid by Gilpin County.
Also on page 4 in the chart, if it's over $5,000, it has to be a written contract. And the next item says that any and all written contracts must be reviewed and approved by the county attorney.
So I guess my question is the last
there's
sentence that you're adding, unless determined by the county manager that board approval is not required. That is referencing MOUs and IGAs. That
And
last
lease
sentence.
agreements, grant agreements, and loan agreements. All other agreements that weren't covered by the threshold table.
So it helps,
I
yeah, we
think-
have the lower level, which empowers the department heads and
Yep.
in consultation with the county manager. And then if it's written, it has to be approved by the county attorney. So there are different levels of scrutiny and protections without everything having to come to us if they're under $5,000 on here, unless, as far as contracts.
Well, would it be better to put unless determined by the county manager after the discussion of agreements and not after the section on MOUs?
I'm sorry, where would you like it?
Say also any other contracts, excuse me, before that sentence. After the first sentence in section 7.1.
No, because that sentence applies to the threshold table for goods and services. So the authority is already clearly laid out in regards to those via the table. Whereas all the other agreements that aren't covered within that,
Which right here says IGAs, MOUs, lease agreements, grant agreements, and loan agreements. And we just said that, at least I just said IGAs and MOUs are a different type of agreement and should always be presented to the board, not according to the
okay,
county manager's approval.
so you would like the exclusion only to apply to lease agreements, grant agreements, or loan agreements?
Yes,
Okay,
that's my
Sorry, I was
preference.
unclear on what you're trying to say. I got what you're saying. now.
That's
Okay.
my preference. And
Okay.
then not have that applied to IGAs and MOUs.
But in reality, they come to us either before approval or as a point of information.
Yeah, typically it would be included, I would
nothing that-
assume in the consent
There's
agenda.
nothing that doesn't
Mhm.
come to us. at
Then
the
why
point
do
of
we need
process.
unless determined by the county manager, the board of appeals? Are you speaking about MOUs and IGAs?
Yeah, sometimes things are done outside of us
Yes.
to fit with the timelines that are required. And then it's reported to us what's done. And that's in the lesser amounts or the IGAs, MOUs. Because some of those, and those are always done through the county attorney. So I think, I feel
I
like,
think it'd be clearer
like
if we
it's okay.
include, if we're going to include that last section of that last sentence, which is what you're asking for, I would have it specifically for, well, as I mentioned, agreements, grant agreements, loans, et cetera, and exclude that from having even a possibility of just, it is, IGAs and MOUs must be presented to the board with no exclusions.
I'm okay with it the way it is.
Okay, what I propose, I can rewrite section 7.1, where it specifies also any other contracts such as lease agreements, grant agreements, and loan agreements must be presented to the board via resolution, regardless of the contract amount, if any, to be paid by Gilpin County unless determined by the county manager. IGAs and MOUs, will all need to come to the board via resolution for approval. That's how I would rewrite it.
And I think that's clear, and I think it's a better, and better for the board to know that those types of documents will always be brought to the board without exception.
Okay.
I'm okay with the way it is now, because they always come to us
Okay.
at some point in the process.
So Commissioner Berman, do you have?
I'm just trying in my mind to see flip flop what the real difference would be. And I don't see any.
Really, I think the only intention for this is if it's time sensitive and if it's really minor, that would be the only time it would be really used. If it's anything significant or anything that, obviously I keep the board very abreast of what's going on. So it would be really minor times that would be used. I think the example that Ms. Majek references is a good example of kind of an agreement for the youth soccer, was it the soccer association, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the very minor end of it that had no material impact on the budget and provided a net benefit for the citizens of the county.
Yeah, and I'm, in my mind, I can't really think in the 2 years I've been active on the, been on the board, that we've had any times where any IGAs or MOUs have come through that we were not aware of or at some point had a work session on. So, yeah, I'm not seeing any real need for a rewriting of it at this point. The only thing I do agree with is going ahead and having the change of wording in 2.2. So do we have any questions or others? No? Then we can go ahead and entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adopt resolution 24-103 with the amendments on 2.1.
2.2.
Excuse me, 2.2 to define the contract as an employment contract and to rewrite section amend 7.1 to add unless determined by the county manager that board approval is not required after to be addressed with lease agreements, grant agreements, and loan agreements only.
Didn't we just say that 2 of us didn't think that was necessary? Sorry. I can't say, I'm sorry, I'm always looking past. Didn't we just say 2 of us say that wasn't necessary?
I was waiting for you to make an amendment, make a motion. You did not, so I made.
No,
my
it was your
motion.
turn.
Wasn't
If we're alternating. Yeah,
Well, anyway, the
It's okay.
motion's out there.
okay.
And is there a second? Okay, I'm not hearing a second. So if we can try again for a motion.
Do you want to amend yours based on our discussion? Commissioner?
No, I do not.
Okay. I move that we adopt resolution 24-103 with the amendment of section 2.2 already discussed.
Okay, and a second? And I'll second. And all in favor of the amended resolution?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, and the resolution 24-103 is amended, is adopted 2-1. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And have that. We can move on to the county attorney's report.
So I made motion 7 and motion 8. And motions. Okay. All right, just so I know. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I just want to let you know, we are working on a study that should be, I should begin this week from our water consultants. Help us determine some matters regarding water purchases. So working on the roads memo that should be done. Again, just some cleanup, I believe, on that this week. And then we'll have that out to the board for review and the county manager. A big project, Dakota Hill, we're working on that. There is no deadline for getting that done. The U.S. Forest Service changed their mind on that, but obviously everyone wants to get this done as quickly as possible. It is moving forward very well right now, so we are checking off boxes, and hopefully, and again, I can't give you a date, but we are getting all the information that's been required by the U.S. Forest Service. We're waiting on the folks, and these are users of the tower and users of the site, and we have to get FCC information and each of the entities information, and then we have to confirm things. So it's been a process, but it is moving forward. Assisted the treasurer's office in a minor matter. Obviously, we talked about the Kroger settlement. We have several ordinances that we're still working on. These have relatively minor revisions, but for example, the massage business ordinance is just adding licensing for those other employees in massage business. The dog ordinance is just a matter of changing the violations on that, whether it's petty offense or if it's a civil infraction. And then we have a bunch of contracts. Yes.
Change or updating whatever the intention is on the dog ordinance. Was that brought to you from Sheriff's Department as a concern?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, but yes, so that one, there's two components of that. There's two different types of dog law there. One violation of one would be a civil infraction, and another one would be a petty offense. So we just need to correct that and add the petty offense one in. So working on that.
Thank you.
I have not gotten a group together. I did reach out to our OEM director, and I have talked with Paul, obviously Paul Under for Timberline, to try and get our group together for a group together, I should say, for that fire suppression and working on the cisterns and all that stuff. So I did work with Director Alyssa Witt about providing some enforcement on some violations, public health violations and or zoning violations. We're working on kind of getting that, whether it's through our trash ordinance or whether it's going to go through a public health law on that. And that's what I have. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. And do we have any questions?
I have a question. I don't know that this has come to your attention, but we received an email from a resident yesterday, and they were just requesting that we, because I was looking at the community development violation cases, and a lot of them involve trash. So the resident request is if we would look at ordinance 9902 and the fines in there. So I guess that would be nice to just revisit that one and see what it says and see if it's,
Oh, that's number 14.
yeah, what's that?
On number 14, regarding trash violations, et cetera.
There's just specifically that request, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So just to comment on that, I know we have, I think we really like that ordinance. It gives us a lot of teeth and power when we enforce that. Is there a specific concern? Are they concerned it's not? Is there a, just to educate us so that we might, if we revise it, maybe better?
Steeper fines,
What's that? Steeper fines?
fines.
Okay.
Just to take a look. They're just asking us to all take a look at it.
Got it. I don't think I did get a comment.
It just came in last night.
Oh, okay.
And having no other questions or comments, we can move on to the county manager's report.
Thank you, commissioners. You have my written report in your packet. I'll just hit a few of the highlights here. So we will be having a work session on the 30th. At this point, I'm not sure if we received any protests for those CBOE, so we may not need to have that, but I'm waiting for confirmation if anything comes in the mail. So it may be just as strict, just the work session without the special meeting prior. For the work session topic, I did talk with Chief Under, so he is getting prepared to talk about the efforts that he's already performed for mitigation, and then a plan for some sort of private property effort. Initial discussion, we'll see where that goes. We have not heard anything from the Netherland Food Pantry, so that likely will be stricken from the agenda, so it will be a little shorter, one less topic. But everything else at this point is scheduled to be on the work session for next Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Question on the Board of Equalization. Do we have to have a meeting even if there's no action? I mean, would it require? to
I
have a
don't believe so. If there's nothing to consider, I don't believe we need to convene. Yes. IT firm reviews. So we've completed the second round. The reviewers have scored. I believe everyone has scored except for myself, so I'm the last one. I'm hoping to complete that this afternoon so we can see who the top firms are, and then whoever has scored the top score, I will be reaching out to them to start the negotiations on the IT firm. So more information to come on that. Broadband efforts, waiting for an update on that effort. That's going to be later this afternoon. It still seems like it's going to be later this year for any real meaningful update, but I'm going to be working with Mr. Bauer to get that update since Ms. Boyle is out for leave. Very excited to announce that we filled the deputy clerk to the board position, the assistant to the board position. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining.
Welcome.
Yes, she's been very quiet over there taking notes. I don't know if you want to say, to give any sort of introduction for yourself for the board. Obviously, I'm familiar with working with you with Central City, but I don't know if you want to provide any sort of introduction for them. Not to put you on the spot, like I just did. So, moving on. So she came from obviously Central City, and she did various functions in community development, and we worked together there as well. So great to have her as part of the team. Wrapping up the 1041 draft reviews. So once we have completed that, then we're going to be setting the time frame for it to come back to the board for formal consideration. Gilpin Sewer Project, it's my understanding the city of Blackhawk and the first responders are taking the lead on that effort. They're very engaged. And so it's likely the project won't start until August. I have no other update other than that, but I know that they're very engaged regarding the project. Again, mitigation efforts are going to be planned for Aspen Springs. I've received quite a number of calls from the residents in that area, and I've been sharing their contact and their concerns with Timberline. Primarily, it's about specific trees and the efforts, and so that's really a Timberline effort. Also very excited to share that we concluded a 2-day manager supervisor training last week. So that was Wednesday, Thursday, very well attended. We had 30 of the leadership team and various managers throughout the organization attend. We had a great facilitator that very much complemented Gilpin County, our staff, the culture here, and was very supportive of that. So thrilled to have the first training that we've had for supervisors in a very long time. There will definitely be more, but just wanted to report back that we did complete the supervisor training last week. I did share via email, and it's going on the website, or it's actually on the website, Gilpin County Economic Update. This is with our partners through the Clear Creek Economic Development Corporation, where they've worked with a professor at Colorado Mesa for a county-specific economic snapshot. They did one for Clear Creek, they did one for Gilpin County, so I shared that. I believe that was on Friday. And then probably the biggest news, I know there's a lot of big news, and I know the board's aware, but it's important to share publicly, that we did receive notice on Friday that we were awarded the full request for the Energy Mineral Impact Grant for the Community Center Annex, the food pantry, so in the amount of $650,000. So that's quite exciting. More information to come on that, but that will definitely help with the overall construction costs. And I will stand for any questions the board may have.
Do you have any questions or comments?
No, I know in the email that you sent, there was the offer of the bus. Did you want to mention the offer of the bus?
Sure. So Gilpin RE1 offered the county one of their buses and see if there's any use for it for basically no cost. So we wanted to see if there was any sort of potential use. Parks and Recreation expressed interest that it might be valuable for transporting kids. So Public Works, specifically our mechanics team, went out and inspected the buses and found that there's obviously they're older buses, many miles, that they're not in the best shape, and they're going to be quite costly if they would be transferred to us for ownership. So based on the recommendation from the experts, I've declined that offer to the school. I thank them for the offer, but I've declined the offer given that there's not just cost of maintenance, but the drivers need to be CDL, and there's some other issues associated with it. So that offer was, we said thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there is specific training and all, especially when you're transporting children, that the bus drivers need to have and keep maintained.
Yeah, there's
For
definitely
those,
more
yeah.
to it than
There's,
just
yeah, than
taking
just
the bus.
a bus driver. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
If there are no other questions or comments, and we'll move on to public and press comment again. And do we have anyone signed up for it or here in the room? No, and is there anyone online?
No one online, Commissioner Berman?
Okay, then we'll move on to the commissioners' reports. And Commissioner Hollingsworth?
Do you
yes, you'd
want
like
to
start?
mention the ones we all want to, or you want, I have them on my list, but do you want me to mention them?
If you'd like to,
Okay.
yes, and then you can go on.
So July 10th, we all attended the town hall with Senator Representative Amable. Let's see, then we all attended the work session with Central City regarding housing. And that was on July 16th. Then and we all were in the fair parade. And because we were in the fair parade, we missed the CCI meeting, which was their first pass on their legislative proposals, but I did request the recording and then I've shared that with both of my fellow commissioners to watch at their leisure. So I attended the Medicaid inmate exclusion policy, which was a CCI session with healthcare policy and finance. And it is something I've been working on since I started. And then I had put forward a CCI legislative proposal. And then we had discussions with the insurance industry and they weren't interested in tackling it. And then we heard that the federal level, they were looking to make some revisions. So as it is now, the good news is that HICPUF is really trying to work with the federal level to do everything exactly as they request so that the waiver would be extended to include jails probably in 2026. So that means that there'd be a couple elements. One is that there'd be more coverage for people that were in our jails, all jails in the state. If they come in with Medicaid or eligible for Medicaid, and then they would also be able to ensure that they leave with their Medicaid intact, because right now it gets dropped or it gets paused, suspended. So it's something they're working on. So right now they're implementing it, working to implement it at the prison level, and then after that at the county level. And I've talked to Chief Demo about it and he's aware as well. So that's really good news and I'll keep following that because that would be a real cost savings potentially for the jail and benefit the people. Then I attended the CCAT County Revenue Ideas discussion along with Commissioner Berman. A lot of creative minds out there for bringing in county revenue. And then yesterday we had our GROC Opioid Council. So my update is that we discussed the criteria for the next round, and the next application round will be due September 15th. And so I'm going to be meeting with Chief Demo, an entity that does peer recovery services and public health. So kind of our voting member collective to talk about some program that would benefit jail inmates to have more recovery services as they are in jail and leave jail. And because those are evidence-based programs that make a difference. But the good news I wanted to share was that the funding that's going to be available, and it doesn't mean we will use it all as a GROC, but the funding that's going to be available for this next round is over $19 million, $9 million. It's 9,869 and change. So that'll be available, and partly that's because there was a 2.2 million carryover for funds that we didn't allocate because we didn't have strong applications. So one thing I talked to Representative Amabile in the town hall, she made a comment about another county spending the opioid money on things she thought were a little on the frivolous side. And I let her know that our region, GROC, is very, very focused on the people, the services for the people and helping them prevention and then reduce use and get through recovery. So it's really focused on that, the people, and she was really happy to hear that. Those are the choices we're making.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Mornes?
Just to add to that, besides the events that all commissioners attended, I attended on July 17th, the DRCOG directors meeting. And one of the things that they brought up that I thought was interesting is they are working on their housing assessment document for DRCOG area, and we are in that area. So they're planning on having a dashboard available so that cities and counties can go that are in DRCOG can go in there and get detailed information specifically for their area. So that's not ready yet, but they are working on that. And then I also attended the IIJA broadband webinar and got some updated information on what's going on with the BEAD project, and I transferred that information to Ray Rears. So you can follow up on that. I manager Ray Rears, excuse me. And then I just want to make a comment about the county fair, and you didn't bring this up on your report, but you said you were there representing the county and you thought that was a good use of your time. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So I was there on Saturday from about noon to 3. My joke is I know like every third person, so it takes a while to kind of make your way across the fair. But I actually manned the table that was kind of a county generic table, and it was great to just talk to people that I didn't know who had questions about the county. And two highlights out of that is someone came up and they were interested in applying for the maintenance tech position, which is obviously hard to fill. And someone else just moved here last week who's interested in applying for the dispatch emergency communication. So just randomly, two people are interested in applying for two hard to fill positions. So I thought it was very worthwhile to sit at the table, and I hadn't done that in years past. And I think it's going to be something that we're going to have in the future, where we're going to have a county specific table booth that will be manned by various staff members moving forward, because it was a good way of outreach to the public and in a less formal, casual manner. So it was great.
Good.
Thank you for
Okay.
reminding me of that.
Okay, and then as for myself, I also all the above, as well as CCAT steering meetings, considering revenue for counties, as well as housing legislation that is being considered for next year. Also spent time at the fair, and it was great to be there and just see all people, and a lot of people who were interested in even coming up to Gilpin. So they had questions as what's Gilpin, what's here, and then just speaking with different residents as well. Then we can go ahead and, as far as upcoming meetings, on the 25th this week, we'll be having our staff picnic, which everyone's looking forward to, and I hope all staff will attend with their families. On the 27th, we've been invited to a reception at the Gilpin Arts Galleries, as well as a tour of the Belvedere to see a hard hat tour. So I'm assuming they've got a lot of work going on there. So that'll be interesting to see. On July 30th, of course, is our work session. And then in August, I believe it's the 8th, CWPP will have an open house here at the courthouse starting at 6 p.m. So our residents can get more information regarding the countywide plan and also, give some input. And then on the 13th of August, we'll have our Board of County Commissioners meeting. Is there anything else? I think that's, and yeah, and now we have a motion for adjourning the Board of County Commissioners and moving to executive session.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn the Board of County Commissioners meeting and adjourn. To adjourn the Board of County Commissioners meeting and move to executive session for discussion of a personnel matter under CRS 24-6-402.
I'll second.
Okay, and having the motion in the second, all in favor? Aye. And thank you. We'll adjourn the Board of County Commissioners meeting. It is 10:58 and be moving into executive session. Thank you.